Thank you, Damien, and good afternoon, everybody. I don't look that. Am I that serious? Actually, the photo I gave you NFL was not that serious, so I think they changed it on me. Listen, I want to. It's a real honor to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Peter, Brandon. I know Brandon's not here, but thanks for inviting me. I didn't have anything to do this week anyway, so I'd come on over. You know, I will say this: the last few weeks. Is this okay? Am I getting a lot of reverberation? All right. Okay. All right. Should I take this one off or? Yeah. Is it weird?
Turn off the lav.
Okay, we better?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Start over. I'm not that serious. I was going to say the last few weeks, I'm going to sum up what it's like to work for the NFL. And I'll tell you what I mean. You know, for the last several weeks, those of you who haven't been attention and watching the games, it's just been, you know, absolutely incredible. This is our biggest season ever. We had 18 regular season games this year. The 39 games were literally decided in the last play of the game. And then on our division, on the playoffs, every single game was pretty crazy. Yeah. Should I just turn this thing off here?
Yes.
No, it's this one here. Should I turn this one off? Yeah. Sure.
Told you we were friends.
Well, you never mind. All right. You gotta be flexible. All right. How's that?
Great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so the last few weeks have been you know, quite interesting, and I think again it kind of sums up what it's like to lead the NFL market and be part of the NFL. On the one hand, we had these incredible games, and like I said, it's just the action and the drama behind the end of these games has been truly amazing. So the product has been fantastic. And then we have had some real challenges around some pretty important and complex issues around the lack of diversity amongst our coaching and GM ranks. And, you know, these are truly troubling times and very challenging for us on the marketing side and anybody who works for the NFL right now. And I think that balancing our marketing program with our messages has never been so important, and I think never been so challenging. And there's no doubt that when I look at the job that we have to do in marketing, that, you know, fans want to escape, right? They want a distraction. On the other hand, they're really looking as well for us, as well as a lot of other corporations out there today, to take a leadership position. And I think that, you know, the biggest institutions out there today, many of them over the last couple of years, have really decided to take clear stances and, you know, essentially use their platforms and the leverage of their scale as a force for good. And I think we take that quite seriously at the NFL. And we don't always get it right? And I think that what I want to do today is I want to share with you some of the things that we have been doing, okay? Where I think that we've made a lot of progress and things that, you know, we have done right. And then I also want to share some things with you that, quite frankly, have been mistakes, right? Things that we wish that we could have done over and done differently. I think both of these things are very important for you as marketers to sort of understand and learn how to navigate the waters. You know, when I joined the NFL, I don't know, 3.5 years ago now, I came into it, you know, eyes wide open. On the one hand, I was thrilled to be a part of this game. I love football, and it was a dream for me to be a part of the game. But I also knew you know, the NFL has real challenges, and they needed careful navigation, and they needed leadership, and yes, they needed change. And so I believed in the power of this brand and the power of its platform to actually, or a yes to entertain and yes to bring people together, because that's important, but also to be a force for good. So I'm going to share some work with you, and we're going to talk about strategy as I go through. I always like to share the work because I figure it's one thing to put strategy on a piece of paper, but if you can't see it and feel it in the work, really, what good is it? So I'm going to start out by one of my favorite pieces of creative that we've done. It was actually the first big piece of creative we did with 72 and Studying after they shortly came on board. We did this literally in weeks, and it's got over 50 players in it. So it's a Super Bowl. So let's take a look.
Welcome to the 100th season of the National Football League. Tonight is not about the league. What's up, Juju? It's about football. It's about the players, the fans, the moments, and everything else that makes you say,
Oh boy.
Fumble! Oh!
Let's go! Joe! No can do, cowboy.
Come on, TG.
Damn, B.
Y'all know I have more yards than they do.
You still got it. That hurt.
Boy, this is a great party.
Get out there, old man.
Hold these.
Yes.
He's open.
Russ?
I got you, Tony.
That's a cake.
Can I have the ball, please?
You want this? Come and get it.
Hard watching that ad. It's so much fun. You can imagine, it's a lot of fun to make too. I want to share that because the strategy that we put in place before we made that ad, that you see inside that ad, is the same strategy we have had now for the last 3.5 years. And I'll talk about the impact there. A few things to point out. What you notice there is that it was totally helmets off, right? I mean, obviously from a practical perspective, football players have their helmets on all the time, unlike a lot of other sports. And most of our audience don't know our top players, right? So it's important to not only show them who they are, but also like who they are as people, not just elite athletes. So we spent a lot of time really understanding the players, what they cared about, the things that they enjoyed, whether it be entertainment or important causes. The other thing you saw in there is that we really leaned into youth culture, into younger generations. So yes, we had Jim Brown, yes, we had the 72 Miami Dolphins there, but what we're really trying to do is bridge generations and really focus on that youth culture. And you're going to hear more about that today. Ian Trombetta is going to speak later today on all the stuff we're doing around social influencer marketing. And you'll see the depth of those programs that we have been working with our players. And then, just the importance, I think, of leaning into the joy and the fun of this game. Now, the strategies that we employed there really propelled us forward in a very short amount of time. Within 18 months, we hit an all-time high with our fan base. We hit close to 184 million people within the NFL fan base. On top of that, we had a higher composition of women fans, of Latino fans, and of that Gen Z fan base. In fact, the Gen Z fan base was in decline for 7 years and we pulled it out of decline. So we knew that we were going in the right direction and we were incredibly excited. And again, we have continued that strategy from that point on. However, things changed, and we all know that. That was back in 2020. And then the spring, when the pandemic hit, pretty much, everything had to be re-questioned in terms of how we move forward. And at that time, we were even debating whether we should even do the draft or whether we would even have a season at that time. And we determined at that juncture that it was more important for us, if we could do it safely, to go ahead and do that draft and to go ahead and continue to move, but just lean into technology and find ways to sort of conduct the draft remotely in a safe way. The other thing that we did is that we decided to use that opportunity to give back. And you can go to the next slide here. And to create a draft-a-thon, right? The draft-a-thon was essentially, having a group of fans of the game who happen to be celebrities and current stars of the game, and bring them together to talk about important societal issues and those who were impacted mostly from the pandemic, and then find a way to generate funds. And this forum, this online forum, ended up together with our other NFL family efforts, create over $100 million to donate towards the pandemic. And I think this was on the one hand, it showed us that we could do things that we didn't realize, and that we could actually do this thing remotely and make our players much more relatable and show them in a different light that had never been seen before. But it also proved to us that within a short amount of time, we could leverage the strength of the NFL and the platform and the whole family and create $100 million almost overnight. And that to us was very important as we move forward. Now, shortly thereafter, again, we all know that things changed, right? And there was really a social justice or racial reckoning in this country. And I think, you can go to the next slide. I think that it was a time for the NFL that was a pivotal moment in history, perhaps history for the country as well. And I think that, we clearly understood that we had to essentially look in the mirror, right? That we had to bring a level of, to really go deep and to think about the things that we had been doing for several years and be willing to sort of look at that soberly and be honest with ourselves. But I think if you're in a situation like that, you have to be willing to reassess. And you have to be willing to look at some of the decisions you made and actually say, yeah, if I could go back and do that all over again, I would do it differently. I think that particularly after the murder of George Floyd, on that sort of string of senseless killings and the horrific acts that were uncovered during that time, we really just down deep to begin to look at our entire social justice program and what we could do. And we determined at that time that there was a lot more that we could do and should do. And Commissioner Goodell worked with us. And we, at that time, you probably remember, he did this very important video where he came out and he said that, we should have listened, we didn't. There were moments in time where we got things wrong. And when Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed and so many others, Kenny Stills, were talking about these things, we weren't listening properly. And I wish now I could go back over it and do it all again. That was a very important moment. And I think, we were talking a bit earlier in the last session about, politics and so forth. And it's interesting how a lot of these things, people, which are just about humanity, people somehow see as politics. And I think that it was important for us at that juncture to not look at this in any way other than humanity and compassion and taking clear stances on things and issues that really matter.
The Kansas City Chiefs are champions. Football is a microcosm of America. All races, religions, and creeds living, playing side by side. When we open the door for others to compete, we fulfill the promise of one nation. Let's open it wide for those who believe in themselves, that anything is possible. I am asking you to believe in your ability to bring about change. We represent the game, our team, our community. We all have to try harder. My great-great-great-grandfather had no choice. We have one. I pray we dedicate ourselves to be the best team we can be, working and living together.
Oh, can we touch for a second? No matter what I give it to, my love looks better on you.
So this was, thank you. created that platform at that time, and to this day, we continue that platform. It's with all of our social justice initiatives and programs, as well as all of our cause marketing. And I think that we listen. Working for the NFL, you can be successful or not successful based on your relationship with players, right? Excuse me. And the way in which to do that is to really earn their trust, right? They don't have to work with you, but if you earn their trust and you really treat them as true partners, and you get behind the things that they care about and that they want and that they feel are important to them, then they will work with you along the way. And I think I'm very proud of the fact that we continue to work with lots of players, and they call us if they see something that we're doing that they're interested in. They'll literally call us and ask to be a part of it. And I think that has been a part of the secret to our success. Obviously, particularly young fans love to see their favorite players out there, but I think that it has been incredibly critical to our success in that sort of earning that respect to the players, and again, being willing to be open and be transparent and really treat them with honesty and integrity. I want to share with you now a piece of creative that we do for some of our cause marketing. It's an initiative we call My Cause, My Cleats. It's a great program. Like over 1,000 players this last year contributed to this program. And what you see in this is that the causes that the players get behind are so personal and so important to them. And there's an element around design. So the players work with key partners and designers, and they create their own cleats of their cause, and then they wear them for a few weeks. And then there's we have integration across all of our channels in the broadcast, et cetera. But we at the NFL, we contribute about $500 million a year in cause marketing, not cause marketing, cause initiatives, which is a contribution working with over 1,400 organizations and working with players. So it's just the way it is. It's a fact that no matter which direction you're going to go in, you're going to get called out in some ways of being like, well, that's performative marketing. That doesn't mean anything. You put a stencil of end racism in your end zone. What does it really mean? And what does it really mean to put a nice video like that out there? I think that what we've tried to do is say, no, it is important. It is important to create awareness, to sort of win hearts and minds, but it's also important to roll up your sleeves and get out there and work with organizations, work with communities, work with players, and work with them the things that they believe in, and then provide them with the ability and the platform in order to make a difference in our communities. I think that's what I'm most proud of. That it's not just this. It's not just the decals on the back of the helmets. It's not just the stencils. It is, yes, it's the checks, and yes, it's the rolling up our sleeves and working with communities together with our players and partners. And so I want you to see this piece of creative. I think it's again from Second Zone Study. As you know, they do very powerful work, and they've done a very consistent level of high quality work here. And I just want you to see this.
My fellow players, my brothers,
For each other, let's go!
my rivals, it is my responsibility
to my city, to my community, my family, and my predecessors.
Everybody is a role model. Everyone.
I love you, Aaron Donald, man. I look up to you a lot.
I appreciate you.
to use my reach.
I'm standing here today telling you hate does not drive out hate.
And bring awareness not to myself, but to help others. To see the world from someone else's shoes.
Hey! What's up, buddy? How you doing?
To all those battling, not just on game day.
I'm so enamored with the Trevor Project. There are young kids who kill themselves because they're afraid of what life will be like for them.
You are my role model, my inspiration.
Today, my goal is to shine the spotlight on you.
And when they mention our legacy, I sure hope they don't only mention football. I hope they talk about raising awareness for sickle cell.
But know that my job is never done. This is my pledge.
This is my pledge.
This is my pledge.
And this is my cause.
it's a beautiful program. There's a level of if you go to the next slide, I think there's a level of vulnerability that you must have if you're going to be willing to do work like that and to work with the players like that. And I think to me, it's super inspiring that these players, I mean, they're these elite athletes, obviously very strong and fast. And they're like modern day gladiators out there in the field. But on the other hand, they have these deep personal views on these things. And it's been important for us to really understand that, like I said, and get behind it. And speaking of vulnerability, there's another gentleman. I want to take you to the next slide here. Was it going to kick off? One of the things I'm sure you've all read about and perhaps understand on a personal basis and with your family and friends, the anxiety and depression is really, it's always been a problem, obviously, but this last couple of years has been particularly difficult for people, right? So now a clear 1 in 5 Americans are suffering from some kind of anxiety and depression. And, a lot of our players are talking about it because even if they're as successful as they are and do all these amazing things, they also have some of the same issues that all of us have. And so many of them begin to speak up and use their platforms and talk about this thing. So for the first time, we thought, you know what, we should include this in our program and help and work with these players to sort of bring these messages out there. So I want to share this piece of creative with you. It was the first of many that we created and that we ran throughout the season. We started with, there's a special month dedicated to mental wellness, but we felt like the reception was incredible that we got from our fans, and therefore we have used this campaign throughout the year.
I want more compassion, in the next generation dealing with mental health. More love, more patience in understanding that mental health is everything.
I battled through the anxiety and the depression for about 3 years.
I would be fearful about things that I had no control over.
I've learned, various coping mechanisms to work on my mental health.
Meditation for me is exercise for my mind.
It means the world to me to see NFL players be so vulnerable with their struggles from a mental health standpoint. You're seeing guys raise their hand and say, hey, I'm willing to share my story because if my story can help somebody else out there, that's all that matters.
Okay, and then speaking of vulnerability and courage, there's the next gentleman I wanted to introduce you to here, Carl Nassib. You may have heard about Carl. He was the first active player to come out, and say he was gay, and that was a very, very, very courageous thing to do. Working on the Raiders as the starter there. And when we saw that, as an agency marketing team, I mean, you couldn't help but be inspired, right? And we had already planned on doing some things around Pride, the month of Pride. But when we saw this, we thought, no, we got to do something. We didn't have a lot of time, but we put together something that I think is very powerful. And it's become almost like a movement for football is everyone, right? It took on almost a different life. And we've continued again. We didn't just run it during the month of Pride. We ran it on our kickoff that year. We've run it throughout the season. And again, I think, hey, this is one of these messages that not everybody gets behind, right? Not everybody will on a lot of these communications. And you can call it controversy or not, but again, this is for us, it's about humanity. I think it's a very important message for all of us. So. So on this one, the story kind of goes on. This next family you're going to see here, this is pretty cool. So they're from Buffalo. They're very active on TikTok. They're called the Rainbow Dads. They're gay parents who have a son, and they're absolutely adorable. And they saw this and they were so taken by it that they did this video. We'll talk about it afterwards. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Hey, buddy, you know how Papa loves football in the NFL, right?
Yes.
But you know how Papa and Daddy have never taken you to an NFL game before, right?
Yes.
That's because I never felt comfortable enough taking you to a football game because you have two gay dads.
Well, can we still go?
Well, the NFL just made a video that I want you to look at and I want you to read and have your reaction to it. What do you think?
Yes.
And then you can answer the question if we should go or not.
Football is gay. Football is lesbian. Football is beautiful. Football is clean, life, exciting, power, tough, strong, freedom. Football is American. Football is accepting. Football is everything. Football is for everyone. NFL!
What do you think?
I loved it.
I think it's time to go to a game.
Yes.
Pretty adorable. They did, of course, go to the game. They were met by the owner, female owner, Kim Pajula. She was just thrilled to have them. And now they're great fans. They're part of the NFL family. I think these are sort of the stories that you realize that the impact that you can have just by doing things, again, that you feel are right, but yes, there's an element of risk, I suppose, to them. But I think we have learned that by taking these stances, by really, we have a set of values, right? And by behaving in that way, and by being willing to do things which some people consider bold, even if there is controversy, even if there are elements of whether it be inside your company or your fan base that may not like everything, that's okay, right? As long as you're moving forward and as long as you're doing the things that you feel is right for your own brand. So I want to take it back to really where here we are in LA. There's a lot of things, of course, going on this week around the Super Bowl. And like I said, Ian's going to share some of these things. I think Dave Bolger's going to share some things with you as well, the things that we're doing. So I won't spoil everything for them. But it's safe to say that we're doing some pretty cool programs around social justice and around cause and around some of the cool youth marketing and fashion elements as well. We have the Walter Payton Man of the Year. There's one person that's nominated for Man of the Year by each and every team. And then we bring those together and we pick the winner on the field in the Super Bowl. And then this year we created some NFTs of the Walter Payton family themselves, together with some of the today's active players who won Player of the Year before, the Walter Payton Player of the Year before. And then those NFTs will be sold and given to charities. The money will go towards charities of the players. We're also doing some really interesting things, I think, on the fashion side, where we're working together with designers here in LA, and they reflect the diversity amongst their communities. And I mean, the clothing is pretty awesome, but it's also just wonderful to see how the LA communities are just coming together and getting excited around the Super Bowl being here. And like I said, there are going to be lots of things that you're going to be hearing about later today. I want to end my time with you right now before we sit down and do the chat here. The piece of credit we use for kicking off the season. Again, like the season before, it wasn't classical NFL imagery. It wasn't like players out there playing. Of course, we have plenty of that in our marketing program. But I think this is uniquely NFL. But it really is all about like having your back, right? Having each other's back. So this is what I'm doing. That's the NFTs.
Bring it in! Today, nothing else matters. As long as those beside you and those behind you know that you got their back. Who got my back? I got your back. Who got my back? I got your back. Who got my back? I got your back. Who got my back? We 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 got your back.
Who got my back?
Who got my back?
We got your back.
Who got my back?
We got your back.
Who got our back?
We got your back. Who has my back?
As long as we got each other, we can't be broken. So I ask you, who got my back?
Thank you.